Hey friends, welcome to another episode of Sketchy Ideas, the live point counterpoint video podcast where we illustrate and debate concepts surrounding leadership, business, personal achievement in a way that may make you think twice or three times about that thing you just found on the internet. And especially if you're trying to figure out ways to get things done, we're going to talk about it here. I'm Brad James.
And I'm Michael Rampolla.
And we are your hosts. And today, we're going to share with you the one big thing that people always forget when they're planning an event. But before we do that, a word from our sponsors.
I think that's my cue.
That is.
It is. Sketchy Ideas is powered by Spirity. The unknown is preventing growing and scaling businesses from realizing their full potential. They want to make informed and intentional decisions, but business owners are struggling because they don't know what's happening across their organization. That's why Spear OS is the one system that helps business owners know what's happening in their organization in a simple and effective way. By identifying trends and patterns, you can see what's working and not working in your business and make intentional adjustments for growth. Because once you know better, you can do better and truly realize your potential. Reach out to us at spirity.com to learn more. Over to you, Brad.
All right. And just remember, it's your business, but you don't have to do it alone, especially when it comes to the marketing. My friends over at Cream City Marketing help out all the time with all the stuff I don't have time for, including content creation, repurposing, social media, even some crisis management stuff every once in a while. So do me a favor, if you're struggling to figure out the whole marketing puzzle piece to your business, email my friend Erin at creamcitymarketing.com and she will take care of you. All right, with that, let's dive in here. So as a marketing expert and a business owner, I'm curious, Michael, how many events do you put on in a year?
I'm probably producing an event of some scale at least once a month, depending on how big or small you think of an event. We have our big quarterly event. We did our Sketches Foray just a little while back. When I think about presentations, workshops, facilitated strategy sessions, I'm thinking about each of those like an event. And so I would say minimum one event a month. I don't know about you, but I don't know. Does that sound like a lot? Does that sound like a little? Does it sound like average? What do you think?
I mean, that's pretty good. I would say that often, I put on events regularly too, even if it's just for clients.
Right.
And so I think more and more people are trying to find ways to build experiences for their clients. And one of the easiest ways is through events, which is part of the reason why we're diving into this. I'm helping out some clients right now with events. And I want you to understand that events are a great way to drive client engagement, to make your customer experience, less about products and services and more about your client and giving them something that they'll remember, and really diving deep into getting to know you as a brand. But between those things, there are a lot of details that go into an event. And we're not going to get into it all here. But I really want to get into at least the components of an event so that you understand critical pieces before you decide to say, hey, we're going to throw this thing together. Keeping in mind that it's always good to put on an event if you want to do it, regardless of if you don't have all of these pieces organized. And what I mean by...
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. You're good.
I was just going to say, you made a great point that I think is understood when it comes to events. By putting on an event, creating experience, you are engaging with your customers in a very different way. As you said it really, really well, it's not just about one kind, it's deepening the relationships, really what it comes down to. You will get to know and be able to share the personality of your company in a much more authentic way by the events that you put on, and you're going to get a much more authentic relationship with your customers, clients, prospects by bringing them into an event that you yourself have produced. The relationship can be much more deep. I mean, right, we build relationships based on shared experiences. What better way to deepen the relationship than by creating the shared experience yourself? So if you're going to spend some money, if you're going to say, I really want to get to know my customers better, listening session is not how it's going to happen, unless that listening session is preceded by beverages that you have provided. Like that's, I think, the best kind of listening session. That's when customers say the most interesting things, the most valuable things. They're sharing stuff with you because you've created a different kind of relationship. By changing the parameters of the engagement, you change the nature of the conversation. And again, I don't think people understand how events are different than every other kind of marketing or every other kind of customer engagement that you might have. So I just wanted to oversell because I think it often gets undersold.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why organizations like Disney and I mean, even like things like Iron Man and Nike does a lot of sponsoring of events. There's a reason why they do events, and there's a reason why they partner with organizations to build events. Because at the end of the day, it ties into what they're trying to do from a brand standpoint and from a customer experience standpoint. Because people don't buy stuff or services. They buy experiences, they buy brand, they buy into going to those things to create one of those three motivators, right? Like health, wealth, or relationships. I mean, if you look at all the big events, if you look at every event, everything that Disney does, it's all about relationships, right? That's what they're selling. If you look at all, like, I had a friend just do a big marathon about health, but they build an experience around health. Wealth, that's why you go to business conferences. Understand that these things fit those big motivators, and there's a reason why they continue to do them. Yes, they pull in money, but they create the experience, and then people 9 times out of 10 end up buying something at those events or at those experiences, because it's more than just buying something, sticking it on your shelf, or a book. Even books, though, and movies, there's a reason why those sell. Those are experiences. That's why movie theaters exist. That's why all of those things exist.
It's not just for the popcorn. So I'm sorry. I thought it was just for the popcorn. That's not why movie theaters exist for. I go for the pop, because where else can you get like true movie theater popcorn except at the theater? And like the soda from this, like there's tastes different. Probably because I just paid $12 for it, but it tastes different at the theater. I'm just saying. But it's the experience.
You might be onto something, but we'll have to dive into the chemistry there.
Elizabeth, can you just archive that for a future episode? Why the soda tastes different at the movie theater? Thank you. Noted. All right, Brad, please carry on.
So I think if you're running an event, I think it's always worth trying. It doesn't matter if you're a service provider. It doesn't matter if you're a medical, provider. It doesn't matter if you're a retail store. It doesn't matter if you're a small business. I think experiences go a long way, and it goes a long way to doing a lot of things. It's why one of the places that I think people look at a little odd, but if you notice, car dealerships do experiences all the time.
Oh, yeah. And
they do it on purpose. It's intentional, and if it's done well, you're going into the dealership and you're not worried about a car salesman necessarily anymore. You're going to enjoy the experience, and they get you there, and then you at least leave with information and some other stuff. Right. But if you're not one of those, if you're not a dealership, you're a service provider, or you're selling products or retail, experiences go a long way to demonstrate your brand, because they get to interact with your brand. Whereas if you're on a website, you don't necessarily get to interact with your brand. You get to see it, you get to click buttons, but it's not true interaction. If you're a service provider and you have a website, same thing. If you're a store, a retail store, or service provider, this gives you a chance to demonstrate the best of your brand, because there's going to be planning. And that's really what I think we wanted to get into with this whole thing. I think a lot of people struggle with the planning aspects of it. They either do keep it simple, and it's way too little, and then they don't measure and do the important things to see if it actually worked, or they go way too big and way too bad, or way too in depth in certain areas of the planning process, and not enough on the things that help to round it out to make it a quality event. And so, believe it or not, think of an event as if it's like a 5-paragraph essay, right?
Oh gosh, I'm getting flashbacks. Hold on. You're gonna make me write a thesis statement for an event?
Yeah, why not? So if we understand that
this is actually kind of genius. I'm loving this. So carry on.
Yeah. So here's the deal. If you look at an event,
Brad is diagramming his college essays. This is how Brad writes.
Yes. So if you look at an event as if there's a title, right?
Mm-hmm.
And your intro, these squiggly lines are your transitions. Your meat and potatoes, typically you're going to have 4 of them. I can't get low enough. And then your closing statements down at the bottom, you're going to have intro, outro, your 3 arguments in the middle, and that's it. And if you keep it that simple, we can actually begin to boil this down in a lot of ways. And we're talking about the event structure, all right? Now, I want to be very clear. I always, when I put on events, and we did this as well, for example, with the Sketchy soiree, we started marketing it before we even got to the actual event. There's a reason for that. And the reason is because we knew we wanted to iterate on it either way. And so we said, hey, let's market it right away. But with your event, you're typically going to have a title, right? Title's always easy, right? But that's your hook. If you can see that title. Okay. And if you have your hook, the next thing is that you need to really look at, you probably already have 2, 3, and 4 already figured out. And that's your meat and potatoes, right? This is the main part of your event. And this way it gives you a timeline if you've got it. Or like if you're running an event, I always say, hey, you really should find a way to introduce not just a single component, but multiple components to that event, because you're not going to be able to fulfill it all with a single shot necessarily all the way. We go back to our movie theaters for that reason, right? So movie theaters, think about it. Why do people go to the movie theaters? You heard Michael. Michael goes to the movie theaters for the popcorn. Some people go for the concessions. Other people go for the movies that they're going to see. And yet others, guess what? They go for the previews.
Totally true.
Okay.
Totally a thing.
So those three things matter. Okay. So if you look at it from that standpoint, every event needs to be built kind of with that rule of 3. And you really got to understand that rule of 3. That rule of 3 can be different for a lot of people, but there's a reason why you go to maybe a night seminar or a book club, and there's going to be food and drinks and typically some conversation built in. Rule of 3. If you go to a conference, typically you're going to go for maybe the keynote, you're going to go for the workshops, and then you're going to go for the exhibit hall. Rule of 3, right? So if you look at it, most events are built this way. And every event, no matter how big or small, should be built this way. Maybe your rule of 3 has to do with the title. Maybe it doesn't. It really totally depends on what you're trying to do with that event and the goals of that event. So inevitably, your title, you write a paper because your goal is very clear, right? With the goal of a paper, you're either trying to convince somebody of your persuasion or you're doing it for a grade. Either way, you've got a reason behind it, right?
Right.
So whatever your goal is needs to fit the title, and then your title needs to be really based around marketing, and your goal needs to be supported by these 3 things, okay? And most of the time, that's what people do. They do those 3 things. They get a title, because their goal, they've got their meat and potatoes in the middle, and then they forget about the intro and the outro. And the transitions.
Yep.
Okay. So if we understand that all of these create this ecosystem. Now, the reason we've got the intro and the outro are separate from the closing, and intro is not necessarily your keynote. Outro is not necessarily your closing statements. Those are the transition into those things, right? That's the transition into the meat and the potatoes or out of the event. But that's not your bookends.
Don't confuse a transition for content. All right. Don't confuse the transition don't confuse your opening anecdote for your actual introduction. All right. That's undervaluing what that thing is designed to do. The transition has specific and unique value because there's brain transition happening. I'm taking you from here to there. And that's the signpost on the journey where you go, where were we? Where are we? Where are we going next? And if I don't give that its own dedicated time, you're not bringing people along on this journey, right? So don't confuse your transition for your content, because Brad's right. And when you get lost in an event, this is why. when you don't know, how does that connect to this? And I got to take a break. It's because the designer has undervalued how important a transition is. They've confused content for transition. All right. Back to you, Brett. Yes.
So, Michael, what would you say are some of the things, without me spilling the beans, your intro and your outro, what do you think goes into those things? Now, here's the deal, all right? Everybody spends their time on 2 through 4. Everybody does. All my clients do. Every single client does. And then they tend to forget 1 and 5. They get the title, they get the goal, but they skip 1 and 5, their intro and their outro. So what are things that you know of that are important to make sure an event goes off as smooth as possible? Because there's always going to be hiccups, right? Planning is great. Plans suck.
Yes. The previous episode on that. So
yeah,
I think to your question, I think when I'm thinking about an event, I'm thinking about like the registration, like at the beginning, I'm thinking about like a registration table or registration, that it's going to happen, checking people in, whether it's live or virtual, getting them settled, right? Telling them what the day is. Welcome, opening remarks.
Now you're getting into transition, though. That's your transition.
I'm already in the transition. See, I already went too far. Already went too fast. All right, back me up. So
you're back in check-in. Check-in.
Check-in. Name tags. I'm thinking about all the little tiny stuff. So I'm probably missing something huge and important right in front of my nose.
What happens before check-in?
What happens before check-in? What happens before registration? What happens before check-in?
Check-in and registration, kind of same thing, right?
Yeah. I don't know. Isn't that? I mean, that's when the person enters my event, right? Like at that table.
Not necessarily. But before they might even enter the event, what do they begin to do? Whether it's virtual or in person, there's 2 paths. It's kind of different vehicles. Sure. Yeah. So here, these are the things we're going to build anticipation. Yes.
Okay. So it's like the marketing after the sale in a sense. I'm planning on going. Now, how do you make sure that I maintain my excitement, / commitment to attend? Is that part of what we're going for?
That's a big part of it. Yeah, exactly. Right. So think about, let's break this out, maybe digital events versus in-person events.
Okay.
There's typically a mix, right? If it's an in-person event, you should be doing these either way. Yep. But if it's just digital, it's pretty clear.
So it's just digital. It's the confirmation email, and then the emails that I send like the week and the day before with all the details about how to log in.
Yes.
Encouraging me to share on social, right?
Exactly. All of those things matter here. That's your intro. Because you continue to build that anticipation, you continue to build the pathway, you make it very clear to alleviate the anxiety for people. You're really working hard to make sure that they understand when they get there, what to expect, how it's working.
But that's not my event. That's before my
Sure
event.
It is. Why is it before your event?
It's not part of the event. On like Friday at 5, at 8 or something. That's when my event.
Let me ask you a question. How does Disney get you to the parks?
How did Disney get me to the park? By showing me a movie when I was a kid? I mean,
Yeah. But I mean, that's a prime thing, right? Like
by getting the winner of the Super Bowl to tell me that they were going, so now I want to go?
Right. So the marketing that happens prior, but then even when you do register to go to the park, you end up getting a slew of emails. Here's what to expect. Here's what you need to do. This is why this is important. Here's how you get from A to B. This is where you got to go, right?
So it's all of those
things, the
expectation setting, wayfinding. Okay.
Yeah. Wayfinding expectations. And guess what? When you're leaving the park, what happens? They say, hey, thank you for coming. We hope you come back. Did you remember your stuff? Did you buy the thing that you wanted? Right? All those extra reminders. All the profit maximizers on the back end.
Let me make sure you walk through 3 gift shops on your way out, just in case.
Correct. So my point is that when you talk about the intro and the outro, your intro and your outro sets the table. Your outro makes sure that you have dessert. right?
I'm all
And
about
seals the deal to make sure that the experience was great. Which leads me to the thing that people always forget. Whether it's digital or physical, they're still essentially the same concepts.
Okay.
And that's parking.
Parking?
Mm-hmm.
The number one breakthrough experience design, like, is
How many times have you gone to a physical event
parking?
and you can't find a parking spot
You're gonna
and you get frustrated and you leave? How many times have you done that, whether it's a big event or a little event?
Well, okay, so I will admit I am not the leave type, but I see where you're going. I am the get pissed type, for the record.
Exactly. So if you're angry,
we might turn that into a meme later. I'm not the leave type, but I am the get pissed type. Actually, don't turn that. We shouldn't put that on visual.
You should turn. Yep, we're memeing it. Yep, I'm the angry type, but not the leave type. I like it.
I'm going to say we're not going to be happy about it. So no, but you're right, because here's.
And what does it do to the experience? What does it do to the experience?
Now I'm late. I'm annoyed.
When you first get in,
I stepped in a puddle. I mean, yeah, I'm with you. I'm totally with you.
You're not engaged when you get in. The excitement isn't there.
Now, right? Now I'm like wet and uncomfortable, and like now I need to like get I need to get recombobulated.
Yeah. So exactly. So when you talk about digital events, what do you think parking is when it comes to digital events?
That would be like, well, okay, so if parking is ease of entry, then that's going to be all of my free messages and the link and all of the how easy it is for me to get logged in the virtual space,
yes.
right?
Yes,
where's
exactly.
my key? Where's my link? Where's my whatever, right?
Correct. Yep. How do I get in? Where do I go? How do I get there? Right? And so many times people forget those details because they're so worried about the meat and potatoes. But I promise you, if you were to look at the engagement level of people who have quality parking to get in, right from the beginning, they're already bought in.
Sure. You're right. You're right. I'm thinking back to, okay, so takeaway and then the example. Oh, you tell me more about parking.
Even more important, when you leave.
Oh, no, you're right. I mean, here's the thing about it, right?
Because you want to come back, right? You want them to come back. So parking sucks. Even when they're leaving.
I got to walk my butt out. I just had a great event, but now I'm not looking forward to
the hike home. Yep. Or the thing is, that's why like even when you're leaving is going to be a pain because of egress no matter what, right? In a digital event, people just click buy and they go, but then they don't do the follow-up stuff, right? Sure. To make sure, hey, how was the event? How was this? How was that? That's all closing the door on that stuff. But from a physical event, if there's a struggle to get out because you don't have coordination of parking to manage the egress, people are also going to get angry and they go, this isn't worth it. The next time I'm not coming because leaving is such a pain in the butt. I cannot stress this enough. Like big event, little event.
You're right.
If you're running a small event and you're if you're a service provider, right, and you're in like, let's say a mall or somewhere where parking is not easily accessible, you need to point your participants in a direction where parking is accessible and it's easy to get to your store. And then you need to lay out wayfinding so they can do that. Or have somebody there to be the wayfinder to help them get there. Same thing digitally. If you're not laying out the parking spot, the parking garage early so that when they get in, they know where to go and how to get to where they need to go, it's going to be a huge issue.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing on the exit part. Like these things,
location.
And I go back to, correct. And I always go back to, that's why I use this paper to explain it. Because what are the things people remember most about a 5-paragraph essay?
Introduction and conclusion.
First and the last things they read.
Right. So therefore the first and last parts of the
They don't even remember the title most of the time, believe it or not. They remember the argument.
A movie again?
In their own words.
Right.
Yeah, and then they remember the conclusion to close out the argument, but that's it. I don't know.
You're right. I mean, okay, like parking was a letdown, but you've made speaking of a 5-paragraph thesis essay, like you made your case here. You made your case. I'll be, your hook was parking, and I'm like, "Mwah." So the title, not the strongest. But apparently, as you said, that doesn't matter anyway, because it's really right how we open. You got me. You didn't have me at parking, but you now have me with you on parking. Okay, so because as you built your argument, here's what I'm hearing. Because in the physical space, it's ease of access and egress, right? That's why locations, if there's that restaurant in your town that keeps turning over every 18 months-ish, right? I guarantee they have at least a partial issue with access and egress, because that is a killer on most retail locations. Restaurants are already prone to failing. Access and egress is a death knell. Number two, we're talking about experiences, which is really leveling up what an event is. An event is only a part of your experience. There's the before, the during, and the after. The during is the event, but the before and the after, to Brad's point, are the parts that truly matter, both for confirmation of the right decision, and then if I'm doing some sort of call to action after, right, that action is going to happen or not happen, and my loyalty, my engagement, my likelihood to recommend are all going to be about how that thing finished for me, right? Because the primacy recency effect of our psychology. So I went back, so I'm looking at your 5-paragraph essay, right? We've got the hook. Okay, so I used to teach high school English. I used to teach composition. I used to call this the shish kebab. So when Brad goes meat and potatoes, I'm already in, but it's a rule of 3, so we're gonna add veggies. So we got 3. So we've got, think about the hook and the spear at the end, right? So we've got the hook,
shish kebab. I want you to remember the shish kebab.
The shish kebab, because the skewer is the thesis that matters. It's the hook at the beginning, and the spear at the end is the action call to action forward. Your introduction is your why am I here? Meat, potatoes, veggies. There's Brad's rule of 3. And that last part is the proof, because the why has to get answered by the proof. The same way the introduction has to get answered by the conclusion, the thesis has to get answered by the argument. And if you undervalue your hook and your action, or your why and your proof, you got double bookends here. If you put together a fantastic meat, potato, and veggies meal, but you're lacking on those things on the end, or the skewer that pulls it all together, literally your stuff is falling in the fire and now it's worthless. You have to pull it all together. The design of an experience is more than the design of the event. And if you don't think of it as holistically, as Brad has talked about, literally all the way back to, from and back to the parking lot, all that investment of time and effort you've made into your event is not going to have as big of an ROI. So the parking matters.
Parking. Just saying.
Hashtag just saying parking. All right, so if you haven't yet invested in a parking lot near you, now would be a great time to buy up some real estate. Heck, knock down a building at this point, because parking, the commodity price of parking has just raised up by a point. I'm certain, based on the far-reaching nature of the media that we produce here at Sketchy Ideas, I am certain that if you go buy some parking now, it will go up in value over time.
Yeah, just don't pay Paradise to put up a parking lot.
That's bad event design right there. Bad. You
didn't hear the lyric?
No, I did. I did. They put up a parking lot. Ooh la la la. Ooh.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. They took down the trees. They put up a tree museum, or they put them in a tree museum. And the people paid $1.50 just to see them. See, even trees go up in price when Brad makes a parking lot argument. All right, I think we've what have we done? I'm trying to find
I haven't convinced you yet. If I haven't convinced you yet, then clearly you haven't ran enough events. But I get called all the time
or
to manage
attended enough
parking
events
and wayfinding.
Yeah.
That too.
You're right.
All right, we gotta wrap this one up and make sure that the shish kebab is done cooking.
Meters running. Meters running, Brad. We got to get going.
That's right. All right.
There we go.
So with that, we went through building an engaging event with the shish kebab rule, or the high school 5-paragraph essay, whichever one is more worthwhile to you. Both of them work. Just understand that you need to have all these pieces in order to make the engaging event complete, and think through all the details. Now, you still need to make sure you got the meat and potatoes, and the vegetables, still still need to make sure you got the spear going through the whole thing, but you really do got to think about the bookends, the end pieces, the intro, the outro, or the hook, and the point, which is the call to action. That's also where you're parking your intro emails and your exit emails afterwards and closing out all the events. I hope that was helpful for you. If it wasn't, tell us by emailing us at info@sketchyideashow.com or leave a comment in the notes on your favorite podcasting syndicate. And then screen capture what you're listening to and share it with your friends and tag us in it. We'd love to hear from you. And then if there are other things along these lines, we're actually going to dive into some more of this next week, dealing with how to pivot, especially when it comes to events, because things 99% of the time don't go exactly as planned. Plans suck. Planning is great. And we're going to begin to walk through a little bit about how that works next week as we continue down this event path. And the reason I'm saying this is because this holiday season, if you're thinking about running an event, I'd do it. Just saying. It would be worthwhile, especially if it's an in-person event, because people are craving human interaction, not digitally, physically. So I'd recommend it. But close this thing out. If you have any questions, email us, text us, message us, whatever. And just remember, it's a sketchy idea. It doesn't mean it's not worth exploring. We'll see you next week at 1:30 to explore another sketchy idea.
Go plug the meter.